Hey, what's up, everybody? This is just a quick intro to a video you're going to see in a moment. And the goal of that video is to show you a different way to think about a pre-talk, right? I actually don't use one in any formal sense anymore. And I just want to give you a different way to think about it. Hopefully, it gives you a dynamic solution you can use. It doesn't require you to memorize a bunch of lines and things like that, because that is tough to remember all that stuff, especially when you're getting going. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please comment below, like, subscribe, share. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Cool, so let's jump into the video. What's up, everybody? We got a fantastic question coming here from Facebook. So for context, this is someone that wants to help. This is a practitioner that wants to help somebody quit smoking. So the question goes, I've had a smoker request. My last one didn't work out, and I got wrong off the group for undercharging. Do I say no thanks, I don't work with smokers, or do I go for it? I know what you're going to say, but I'm scared. There's just so much pre-talk to remember. This is a brilliant question. There's some real juice here. So, yeah, the charging piece is interesting, but let's talk about the pre-talk and the fear around that. So, I remember being in kind of a similar situation. I was very diligent and disciplined in practicing my pre-talk, and not the one about what hypnosis is and what hypnosis isn't, but specifically the ones oriented around smoking cessation. And so I got really, really good at it pretty fast because I practiced it constantly. And then eventually, I hit some stumbling blocks with clients. So my thinking was, okay, well, then I need to learn more. So I started studying other people's pre-talks, how other people work with smokers and their protocols. And I started incorporating all of that into my work. And so at one point, I had an incredibly robust pre-talk. And still run into trouble, right? And here's what gets really interesting. If we take a step back and we look at this thing, what is a pre-talk designed to do? What's the impact it's truly making? I think it comes down to two things, right? Number one, it's creating an opportunity for someone to reevaluate certain conclusions they've drawn about the nature of their problem. And the second thing, it's allowing the client an opportunity to reevaluate the beliefs they have around their ability to walk away from smoking forever. So I want you to bear that in mind fully. Just really consider what is it that makes the pre-talk work. And that reminds me of a really interesting piece of history. In World War II, there was a fellow by the name of Abraham Wald. He gets brought in by the Allied forces, and the problem they're trying to solve is that, hey, we're losing a ton of planes. And so the ones that came home, they're looking at them and they see a ton of bullet holes in them. Abraham Wald, this brilliant mathematician, very abstract mind, looks at the situation and they ask him, Abraham, what do we got to do to, increase the survivability of these planes? How can we armor them better? And Abraham looks at the situation, and they've been going down this path for a long time. How do we increase the efficiency of the armor? What's the best way to do it? And the survivability of planes had never increased up until that point. And Abraham goes, what you need to do is actually armor the other parts of the plane. The evidence before you suggests that, you see all the bullet holes in front of you. That means these planes made it back. The ones that aren't making it back are the ones that are getting shot in different places. Doesn't that sound really interesting, though? Doesn't it remind you of the old adage, the presenting problem isn't the real problem? The issue isn't the real issue? Abraham Wald looks at these planes and reaches a completely different conclusion than everybody else. He's solving the actual problem. The way pre-talks are typically designed, they're pointed at the symptom level. Right? They're not getting to that person's problem. So the best way to help that individual quit smoking is to help that individual. And the way to do that is to change the nature of your pre-talk to be a bit more investigative, a bit more understanding. Then what you're doing is you're helping that person untie their specific conclusions. And I think pre-talks, these are like a best practice method for a reason. Yes, I've used them and they've worked. But where the real magic happens is when you get underneath the surface and you're beginning to help people tap into their true potential. And when they get in touch with that part of themselves, a lot of times that just does the work. The smoking just goes away because it's a symptom anyway. So we want to do the work that's underneath the surface, right? And we want to armor the other parts of the individual, to use that metaphor. So what I think is really cool here, here's an example to contextualize that more. In a session actually two of these, the same idea came up recently. Two different women said, it's like smoking has a hold of me. So the first lady, I said, okay, that's interesting. What do you mean specifically cigarettes have a hold of you? So she goes through great lengths to describe all the different ways she plans her day around when she can have her next cigarette. I thought, well, that's interesting. I said, it actually sounds like you have a hold of it. And she didn't hear what I said. It kind of flew over her head. So she articulated the same thing, and that was an indicator to me. There was a bit of resistance. I hit something there. And so I said, yeah, no, I hear you. This is, you're doing all these things to prepare your day in such a way that you have time to smoke. It really sounds like you have a hold of it then. I had to try 3 or 4 different ways to get this through to her, right? Well, then she paused and went inward. I could tell something was shifting, right? I just kind of let her sit there for a while. And then I asked her, so what's happening now? And she goes, I'm a little bit embarrassed. I said, about what? Well, it took me all these years to realize that I was the one doing it all this time. So now this person goes from something that's happening to them to something now they have control over. We've given that person a choice. Now they can walk that path of freedom. But like I could have talked about, cigarettes and habits and, the nature of addiction. I could have went all the different directions with the presupposed pre-talk. Until I tackled this piece for this individual, what's the chances of success they'd have? And just to provide even more contrast in this case, a second example, same situation came up. I asked a question one time. The person goes in, and again, just that really intense searching. And you could tell something was happening. I just said, what's happening now? And she said, I feel so empowered. This really is my choice. I'm in control now. So I'm doing this just to highlight a point. When we go underneath the surface, people are going to have different outcomes as they investigate the nature of these problems. They're both wins. They're both new understandings, right? And so this is how we really empower people to walk away from things. And I don't have to memorize that. I just have to be curious. And this goes back to that old Erickson thing, right? It's about the individual responding to the individual. I think he said something like the best therapy you do is the one you've never done before and you will never do again because it was just so right for that person. In this case, they're quite similar, but you can even see the contrast in the outcomes we did there. So this is a different way of thinking about it, right? And what we're really doing is we're just using the essence of what the pre-talk is trying to do, or what the essence of what the pre-talk is for, right? It's giving people the opportunity to investigate these things differently. And we're just jumping right into it without having to rehearse a bunch of lines and stuff like that. So I hope this gives you a new way to approach it. If you have any questions, comment below. I'd love to see what you put. Listen, folks, like, subscribe, follow, share, all that kinds of stuff. I can't wait to hear from you all. Take care.